Joining me in this episode is Bob Dalton, founder and CEO of Sackcloth and Ashes and Local. He's an entrepreneur, keynote speaker, and social designer working to reclaim human connection in the digital age. Enjoy the conversation. You're listening to Working Forward, a future of work focused podcast from People Forward Network. These episodes pave the road ahead, helping us confidently step into the future as a leader who moves people forward. After all, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Let's go. Bob Dalton, it's good to see you, sir. Welcome to the Working Forward podcast. How you doing, brother?
Always good to see you, Jason.
Yeah, man. Let me tell you, I'm really excited about this because, and I know our listeners are too, because being a future of work podcast, a lot of the stuff we talk about artificial intelligence. We get into a lot of the tech stuff. We're going to go there with you today because you are a tech founder of your own software company. But this is why I'm so excited about this, is because you already have your foot in the other world too. To me, you're a unicorn because you not only get the tech and the futuristic side of where things are headed in terms of how technology will change society, and you have a seat at helping to shape that, but you also are a community expert. You understand because your software is around helping develop, grow, build community in meaningful ways. And so I'm excited for this conversation for us to tap into you, since you're that unicorn that has your foot in both spaces, both community, the human aspect, but then also the technology side of what a lot of us are going through. So maybe to kick things off a little bit, obviously I've had the benefit of knowing you probably for 6+ months. Tanya Dittman got us connected, and I've enjoyed every conversation because of how deep and thoughtful you are. But this is the first time maybe for some of our listeners that are learning about you and the work that you do. Let's start by just having you tell us a little bit of your story and your why of what you do and what got you here so far.
Yeah, so I grew up in Oregon, launched my first company in Oregon 11 years ago. I was 24 years old at the time, trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. I was applying for jobs. Nobody's getting back to me. At the same time, my mom went through a series of events that caused her to live on the streets. And that inspired me to do something about the homeless issue, because I was the guy that would drive by folks on the street and whisper under my breath, go get a job, and had kind of a limited understanding of why people end up on the street. My mom is the hardest working woman that I know. So it kind of changed my whole paradigm of people on the street. It's not usually until somebody in your family or somebody that you're close to goes through a hard time that you start to open up the door for a new wave of empathy for people that you may not understand. And that inspired me to do something about the homeless issue. So I started calling shelters in my area to ask what they needed, and they said blankets. So bootstrapped a blanket company with a sewing machine and a couple of rolls of fabric from Joanne Fabrics, rest in peace, and started selling blankets out of my trunk to mom and pop shops. And we had a couple huge breaks early on that exploded the brand. And so for the last 10 years, I've been building that company. People are like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, I own a blanket company. They're like, how did that happen? And so it's kind of a random thing to fall into, but it's opened up the door to build an amazing network of people around the world that are doing really good work in the space of homelessness, and really good community builders that are taking action on a local level to do something about the issue. So I always say blankets are just a bridge. They've connected me to so many incredible people that are doing amazing work. And so much of my work over the last 5 years have been trying to figure out how can I use my platform to elevate those solutions and those grassroots leaders that are doing amazing work. How can we bring more exposure to them and inspire people to take action in their local communities? The mission of Sackcloth is, my blanket company, Sackcloth and Ashes, is for every blanket that we sell, we donate a blanket to your local homeless shelter. And that's really what got me plugged into this passion of diving into local impact and localism as a philosophy, and realizing that I do really think that that's the most effective strategy to creating societal change.
That's such a beautiful story. And every time you tell it, man, it tugs on my heartstrings, because I think a lot of times about Simon Sinek, and he says, start with why. You put it beautifully. The blankets that you sell at Sackcloth and Ashes and then donate to the homeless shelters, that's just a bridge. What you actually sell is you're selling hope, you're selling empathy, you're selling localism, connection. That's what you're actually selling. And then the mechanism that you were doing it through was the blankets. And then it just came out of your original story of what you're seeing, and with your mom also is so powerful. So you talked about that you're starting to see this push towards localism. Let's talk about that. That may be the first time that some people listening have heard that term before. So walk us through that. What is localism to you?
Yeah. And like the most fundamental way I could say it, you have individualism, which is very culturally relevant. You have localism, you have nationalism, and you have globalism. In my opinion, localism should be at the forefront of our conversations. It's not even a part of the conversation at all. So when I started to get a front row seat at all of the best work that's happening around the United States of people taking action locally, creating some of the best solutions, what normally happens is when you want to support a cause or a natural disaster happens, we're supporting the Red Crosses, the World Visions, the more national or global organizations. And the best solutions to solving issues are the local grassroots solutions. And, the reason why we're spending billions of dollars to try to solve homelessness and the issue continues to get worse, we should take a step back and go, maybe we should change our strategy here. And I think that the strategy needs to be more focused on local impact and localism. It was only 200 years ago that people didn't travel or communicate outside of a 20-mile radius from where they lived. So most of human history operated in community. They lived in community. That's how we raised our families. That's how we communicated. And then within the last 200 years, we went from mostly operating out of communities to the Pony Express, where communities started communicating with other communities, to the telegraph, where long distance communication was possible, to the telephone, where we can actually hear somebody's voice and emotion from the other side of the world, to where we're at now, which is, social networking, social media, doom scrolling, and kind of addicted to this whole content culture. And so I've studied a lot of kind of like, how did we go from operating throughout most of human history in local communities to being completely isolated as a society and disconnected from one another? What happened? What happened there in the last 200 years? And we've globalized everything, media, finance, communication, and we've had a lot of capitalism being utilized at the expense of humanity rather than for the sake of humanity. And so that's where we find ourselves in 2025 in a society that's addicted to technology, where we're completely isolated and we're struggling with actually getting plugged back into community, which is in our DNA as human beings.
And even our workplaces have become like that, haven't they, Bob? So, I mean, we've kind of become like that in terms of social media, getting more of the social aspect, but even the way that we work, we've got a lot more globally distributed teams where you may not necessarily be working in the same town or even in the same building as some of your teammates. So how do we try and address some of those challenges at times where, we may be atrophying some of those connectivity, those connection type skills that we used to have that's baked into our DNA? How do we work on that now that many times we're often working solo on our own, like in terms of being in our own office space or away from other people?
Yeah. I mean, we're at a true crossroads as a society right now, where AI is taking off and advancing, and it's freaking a lot of people out. Like, how's this going to affect my life? How's this going to affect my job? People are now, we're kind of moving into a time where people are going to become emotionally connected to AI through artificial relationship. And then you have the other route, which is more community based. We're seeing a huge rise in micro communities and pro social clubs skyrocket around the world, running clubs, pickleball, mom groups, book clubs. And people are kind of naturally moving into away from this kind of technological addiction, this digital addiction, to real life human connection and community. And so you're going to see this crossroads. It's going to become more and more extreme over the next 3 to 5 years, where you're going to see a bigger divide of people that are kind of obsessed with the digital world and this connection to machines, this artificial way of engaging, and human connection and community. And so I'm watching this unfold and I'm like, man, I need to get involved. I've been in product retail for the last 10 years, and I'm seeing where technology is in a really important time in history right now, where the decisions that we make in tech over the next 2 years are going to shape generations to come. And that's what I need to get involved in tech, because we need people that are not anti-tech, but that are creating tech that's pro-human, and that's actually built for human connection and community, rather than, you know, we're seeing different platforms like Elon's platform Grok just released companions, where you can now create a companion and actually have a relationship with an artificial person. And my friend says it best. He says the future is not going to be AI versus human. It's going to be real versus artificial. And so that's what we're really going to see. Is the artificial world is great because it's going to automate a lot of things. It's going to make things more productive. But if we lose that sense of human connection and community, we're really, really fucked. Like really, really fucked as a society. And so that's where I was like, I need to get involved and do everything I can to make sure that that human connection community element is at least an option in the world of tech and in society as a whole.
That distinction between real and artificial, I 100% agree with you and your friend. What got me starting to think that direction too, a friend of mine who is a big time future strategist over in the United Arab Emirates, I really appreciate his thoughts. His name is John Sinai. And John, just a few weeks ago, he addressed some questions that have been coming his way about the future. And he said, IRL is where there's going to be value in the future in real life. And so he talked about how he believes there's going to be a big wave, a big movement of pushing back into the arts and the humanities of things that you know are genuinely crafted and created, that are real, that are authentic from humans, compared to the artificial things. And so he kind of was painting a future of like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of things that from a productivity or efficiency standpoint, the AI is going to handle, but we're going to get back to the things that have soul, if I were to put it succinctly. And I think that's a beautiful picture of thinking about what the future can look like, is leaning more into that and getting back to our roots of thinking about localism, thinking about our, like, literally our neighbors. I think even that term neighbor, I'd love your perspective on this, but I think the term neighbor has been used interchangeably in so many different walks of life that it's like, really at its heart, neighbor is like the person across the street or right down the street from you. Do you know who they are? Do you ever get to know them on a deeper level? Are you ever there for each other? You don't have to be best friends, but do you even kind of know each other on like this basic level of, hey, if I needed something, or if you needed something, I want you to know that you can depend on me, kind of thing, to be able to be there for each other. Feels like we miss out on that, even though there are more homes than ever before and people live many times closer to each other than ever before, but we've never been more distant. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that the definition of community has changed over the years. So like that makes more sense if you lived in the 60s, like you're actually knowing your neighbors, you're doing cookouts, whatever, like 60s, 70s, the 80s, the 90s, even like you're connecting with your actual neighbors. We're in a different time right now. We're in a different world than we were when we just hung out with neighbors across the street. Community defined is connecting with people in shared interests, goals, and struggles. And so your community isn't necessarily based off of like hyper proximity, but still in proximity. But who are your people? Who are the people that get you and that you understand and that you can share in a community of people that have a shared interest, goal, or struggle that really can understand you. Your neighbors might not understand you. You might know their names and you might have closer relationship, which is good and positive, but it's not necessarily your community anymore. And so that's what, I'm hoping that people can become more and more aware of, is what's happening around me that are my people, that are the people that are sharing in a struggle that I have, or an interest that I have that I can get plugged into. And those are the communities that are life-changing and transformational.
You know, when you were talking about that, it reminded me of something that Zach Mercurio, he's an expert on mattering. He's a psychologist at Colorado State. And he shared one time on an episode with me that Abraham Maslow in his hierarchy of needs, that Maslow admitted he got it wrong. And I never knew this. I was embarrassed at the time when he was telling me this story a couple of years ago, because I'm like, I went to school and became a psychologist, and I didn't know that Maslow admitted that he was wrong about something on his pyramid. Like, this seems kind of important. Yeah. So like, I leaned in when he shared this, and this is what he said, Bob. He said Maslow, before he passed, realized that his hierarchy of needs was inaccurate because of self-actualization. He said the path to actualization is through others. You cannot do it on your own. And Maslow started to understand that. Well, most of us don't know that Maslow was like, I got it wrong. We need to update the pyramid to show that, like, you need others. You need community, essentially, is what he was saying, in order for you to reach like that full potential. Nobody can just do it totally on their own to self-actualize. Would love your feedback or ideas on that concept of Maslow thinking, oh, you know what? I may have gotten this wrong, actually.
We're moving into a time now where it's not just a good idea to be a part of a community. Like, that would be nice. It's about survival, because we're living in a society that is addicted to technology. And when you're dealing with addicts, community is the number one antidote to addiction. And so this is not, we're dealing with a whole different beast now, where it's like, oh, community, that's nice to be a part of. It's like, but we have to be a part of community moving forward. There's a psychologist named Dr. Bruce Alexander who did an experiment in the 70s called the rat park. And he put an individual rat in one box, and he put a community of rat in another, like a rat park. And he had 2 bottles going into each box. One bottle was with fresh water, and the other bottle was water mixed with morphine. He found that the individual rat only drank from the water mixed with morphine, and the community of rats only drank from the fresh water. And so what he proved was, when we're in community, we have a certain amount of dopamine of being involved in some sort of aspect of connection and commonality. And we're not seeking external sources for that dopamine hit. We have everything that we need in community. The isolated individual will seek out that dopamine hit from external sources, even if it's at their own detriment. And that's what social media has become. And so what he really proved was community really is the antidote to addiction. We're dealing with a society of full-blown addicts, whether it's substances or screens. We are a society that is addicted. And so the only hope that we have now is community. It is essential to the survival of the future of humanity.
I had never heard that positioned so eloquently or so importantly, the way that you just, I mean, it really is poignant when you put it that way. And it's easy to see. So as a father of 4 kids, I could tell you one of the easiest things for my wife and I to do is just hand our kids a tablet, because we're like, we just need some silence for a few minutes. But I tell you, we notice changes in their behavior if they're on screens too much. Like, they become more irritable, more argumentative. They aren't as kind to each other. They're getting into it more with each other. They talk back more. And that makes a lot of sense when you share that it's because it really is an addiction of some kind. And that it's fostering like neurotransmitters and pathways in the brain that is replacing the healthy aspect that we should be getting the dopamine release by being with others and doing proactive things, that it's replacing those hits with unhealthy things. That's not all too different than what you would get from morphine or something like that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, we're not offering kids drugs, and it's like, because that would be criminal, but we're offering them technology, which is showing similar effects to addictions to substances. When you look at mental health crisis, a loneliness epidemic, and teen suicide rising by 50% since the rise of social media. So you look at the comparison of the tech industry and the drug industry, and the effects that it's had on society are actually really parallel. to the common outcomes of being addicted to these things. And so, I was recently talking with my friends that have 2 young kids, and they were like, yeah, our hope is when they're in high school, they're going to have the awareness and the knowledge that this is a bunch of bullshit. We don't want to be a part of getting sucked into all this. And I was like, they're not even going to have that choice. We're stripping our kids of autonomy because we're getting them addicted at young ages to where they don't even get to have the autonomy to make that decision for what's good and what's bad for them, because that's what addicts do. Addicts will continue doing something even if they know it's bad for them. So for us to just simply tell society to be on technology less at this point is like telling an alcoholic to just put down a beer and stop drinking as much. It's not going to happen. And so what does an alcoholic actually have to do? They have to get plugged into a support group. They have to get plugged into community. And that's where we're at as a society.
I never heard it put that way either, but that makes so much sense. And that's why I think it was Australia. They may have been the first one, but banned social media for anyone under the age of 18. So you can't even have an account. It's against the law. And then I may flub this up a little bit, but I was thinking Florida here in the U.S. may have instituted a new law within the last year or so that did something similar, where you had to be a certain age in order to have a social media account. Does that sound right to you? Do you remember seeing anything about that?
Yeah, for sure. No, it's definitely happening. And the reliance on government and the law is not going to be enough with how fast things are advancing. Because we have regulations on alcohol, we have legal regulations on smoking, but it's not addressing the true solution. Regulation is not long-term solution and sustainability for a society. We have to put regulations on things because it becomes a crisis, not to prevent a crisis from happening. So I think that like those things are good, but it's not the solution to what society is actually going to need in this next season with how fast things are advancing in technology. We are entering the danger zone when it comes to the technological advancement right now and the actual what this is actually going to mean for society. Like that's why I'm spending the rest of my career, the rest of my life, my short time here on earth to be somebody that is both warning where things are going and helping provide as many solutions as I possibly can for the sake of the future generations that are going to walk this planet. And I'm all in on it.
I love that. And, so I'm going to turn this inward a little bit now. I think we've talked at a pretty grand level about this big challenge, right? We know technology, particularly AI, really making it challenging for people in a lot of different ways in terms of the health of their life and people moving away from being part of a community. Let's turn this inward now and focus a little bit more, because a lot of our listeners are business leaders. So they may be thinking about this through the lens of business and what it means for their business and for their teams, their people. What are some concerns or things that you're seeing and hearing around importance of community or connection in the workplace?
Yeah, from a workplace, obviously culture is, everything in a company. Like you have to have the healthier your culture is as a company, the better opportunity that you have as a brand to thrive. But I think that from like a larger kind of bird's eye view, we're seeing such a massive shift on online communication and advertising and marketing, where I tell companies all the time, including my own company, my own product company, I go to the team and say, look, having a following isn't going to be sustainable. If you don't build community as a brand, you're going to die. You have to build community. And there's a difference between having a following and an email list and building a community. And so that's a lot of where most of my conversations are going with talking with other entrepreneurs or other brand owners is how are you cultivating community for your audience? How are you inviting them in to be a participant, a contributor to what you're actually doing as a brand, rather than just being a follower and getting beat out by all the other companies with all the noise and all the ads and everything that's online, and soon to be all the artificial, misinformation. How do you cut through all that noise and actually build a community? The brands that figure that out are the ones that are going to survive over the next 5 to 10 years. The ones that don't are going to die pretty quick. So I'm getting to learn firsthand when I put on my hat to run Sackcloth and Ashes. How are we building community as a brand? Because if we don't have much more runway.
Who's doing that really well right now, you think, in terms of turning community into brand, in terms of companies? Any that come to mind?
It's a great question. Not a lot that I'm like really following and paying attention to. The brands that really started to build community through like a Facebook group like 5 years ago, they're the ones doing $12 to $15 million in revenue because they have this entire customer base that's all in one digital community that's posting about the product and posting about what they're up to. And the brand kind of has like this, it's an ecosystem of people rather than just the one-way communication. When you send out an email or you make a post on social media, that's one-way communication. The brands that have figured out two-way communication, where they kind of have this like living community in one digital space, I think that those are the brands that are crushing it. But they're also the ones that that's the biggest opportunity in tech, in my opinion. Yes, AI, but yes to digital communities. Like digital communities are the future of online communication. And we are lacking from a brand standpoint, having the platforms to build community as a brand. Our options are Mighty Networks, which isn't great, Circle, which in my opinion has a worse interface than LinkedIn, and Facebook groups, which our audience would crucify us if we said, hey, join our Facebook group in 2025. Our audience would be like, what the hell are these guys talking about? So we're having to explore as a brand, where are we going to build community as a brand in a way that feels authentic, that feels aligned with our brand values, and that we can keep our audience in the loop on a more consistent basis that's not competing with all the noise and the bullshit online. And so that's what we're exploring right now, and what we're really moving into as a company. We're focused on founder-led content, getting back to the heart of communicating in an authentic way what our brand's about, what our company's about, and creating a community as a brand. And I think that the TVD, we're making this shift as I speak, but I think that is going to be the hope for companies, is leading with authenticity, leading with clear messaging from founder-led content, and building community as a brand, both digitally and in real life. And I think that those companies are going to do really, really well.
And I think what branched out of that too were ERGs, employee resource groups, inside larger companies. Was, starting to think like, hey, we're big enough. We need a way to help connect people around shared goals, shared interests, shared hobbies, and things like that. That's not only good for them, but helps them get to know each other when you actually happen to be within the same company where you're doing work each week. And so, have you ever had much experience in the work that you're doing around community with companies that are doing ERGs also? So those employee resource groups?
Not as much, but if I was running a large company where I had hundreds of employees, what my main focus would be right now is who on my team, or who do we need to hire to bring in to be solely focused on creating experiences for our employees. Like doing the most badass events and mixers and educational workshops. Because we're moving out of the era of content creation. Like so many companies went all in on, we got to generate content and we got to make the best videos and all this stuff. We're now moving into the era of community. So we're moving from content to community. So community builders will be the new influencers in this next decade. So the companies, whether large or small, they should all be focusing on what type of experiences and events and ways that we're going to actually bring people together, both online and in real life. Those are the brands that are going to stand out.
So right now, if you're a business leader, if you're primarily focused on emails and one-way communication, it's probably not going to turn out here very well for you here before too long. You got to be focused on like building community, building those connections, like Bob said, and not just relying on email, or email lists, but actually get to know people, make sure it's multi-directional. The other thing in our experience of People Forward Network, we still are stubbing our toe, but we're very far into community as well, and developing a community of People Forward leaders at small to medium-sized companies, and also podcast hosts who have podcasts that have to do with People Forward leadership. And one of the things we've also noticed too is the beautiful part of community is it doesn't have to be even, I know you mentioned two directional, and it is from you to them, from them to you, but the other part is from them to them. That you're creating the space for them, for it to really be something member led in the community, and for them to get value from each other as well. Not necessarily always from like the charter group or the sponsor group that may own or steward the community, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, a really good question to ask is, what type of value are you bringing people to make them want to be a part of your community? And you can interchange that as a company as well. What type of value are you bringing people to make them want to be a part of your company? And I think creating experiences that are not just the get together and network kind of events, but what kind of an experience are you creating that people walk away and go, man, that actually really moved me, or I'm inspired by that. Both in real life, but also online. Like one thing we're going to experiment with as well is I'm going to start opening it up for basically a public forum of opening up the door for anyone to come and listen into updates about our companies. And basically like act as if we are a publicly traded company and provide public updates to people on where we're at as a brand and where we're heading together. I think that means a lot for people. If you spend a half an hour walking through updates of where you're at as a company or a community to your audience, goes a long way.
I've started to see a lot more of that. Are you going to do that through Discord, or are you going to do it through your own technology solution?
Yeah. So for our digital communities, I'll do it through Local, my other company. And then from a online standpoint, we've been using Google Meet or Zoom to, I do monthly calls right now just with our founding community of our new company. We have 50 to 100 people on each one of those calls. And I just do a 30-minute briefing. Here's where we're at. Here, I give a tech roundup. Here's what happened in tech over the last month. Here's where the updates on where Local's at. Here's where we're heading in this next month, but what we're releasing, what features we have coming, and just kind of giving a quick overview, and then finishing with, and here's what you can do. Invite them into being a contributor to the vision. You do that enough times consistently with an audience, and people get bought in. They're excited about it. They get to see and feel the movement.
Well, yeah, it's a much more personal touch to internal communication, right? I mean, so much of what we get is impersonal. To your word earlier, artificial, and that's only going to continue to ramp up. Proliferation of AI. There's going to be so much AI generated content that's just going to continue blasting us through our email, through our social media channels, where we get a lot of information, that it's refreshing, to have what you just described, which is a genuine human-led event where we're going to talk about the things that we're wrestling with, the things that are around the corner inside the company. And it's for anybody that's part of the community, whether you work here or not. But if you care about this type of topic, if you have shared goals and interests around this, then it's worth showing up and having this real human connection around this thing. So I love that picture. The other thing I could see for business leaders right now is, if you aren't already doing kind of like town hall type events on the regular with your people, that could be something really important to think about doing too. That's similar to what you're doing there, Bob.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's anything that kind of brings back the heart of authenticity and gives people an opportunity to hear from the people leading in a real way and kind of relate, to be like, hey, like, this is what we're going through. These are our struggles. This is where we're heading. And this is how you can be involved, and kind of just do a recap. I think those are going to go a long way in the future for companies and communities. I'm beta testing a real event. I've been hosting like local gatherings around the United States, just bringing community builders and designers together for conversations, and mostly like dinners at people's houses and things. But I'm hosting like an official event on August 7th in Salt Lake City at the Edison House, which is like a really beautiful co-working space. And I rented out their speakeasy, fits about 100 people. And I put it out there, and the title of the event is called Creating Human Connection in the World of AI. And it booked out in a week. And now we have tons of people on the waiting list. What I'm realizing is I'm not a professional event planner, but the secret sauce to hosting and throwing a really good event is have a really cool venue that everyone kind of knows about, have a great topic, and collaborate with the right people. Who's the person that you're going to co-host that event with? And so the way we're going to structure it is you're not just going to come get appetizers, network. For the first hour, you come, you get food, you get drinks, you hang out, you meet people, you see people that you know. The second hour is educational. I'm going to give a little 10-minute talk. Then I'm going to bring up a local community builder who runs a design community, have a 45-minute conversation with her about the future of AI and how that's negatively and positively going to affect the creative community. And then the last 20 minutes of that time, open it up to the audience, have a conversation. What are your guys' thoughts? What are your guys' questions on where things are heading? And then wrap it up with allowing people to grab another drink and connect with people at the event, talk about what they just heard or what they're feeling and what they're thinking. But I want people to leave that kind of an experience and go, man, that really was impactful. I learned something. I met somebody that was bigger than just trying to show up and get an exchange of business cards, you know? So I think that though I'm experimenting with these type of events where it's like, how can you create a space where people can come have not just an event, but an experience and have it be something where people walk away and go, man, that was worth it.
Man, I love that. We're going to have to make sure before we wrap up today, we'll get more details on that as like a call to action. We'll get it in the notes for the podcast here and stuff so people can show up if they're going to be there. But the thing that you shared there that I think is really cool too is we don't often think of like that type of stuff that you're organizing and doing as being good for our health, but it is. That level of connection, being with people in those types of events gives us something that we don't get through digital. And here's where I'm going through this. There's this whole aspect now of health and wellness that falls into this bucket called social determinants of health. And many times it's not talked about because it's not the popular thing to do from doctors, because it talks more about when was the last time you had a meaningful conversation? How many friends do you have? You know, those kind of things. Instead, typically when we go to get medical advice, it's how soon can you get a prescription medication in place? And we don't treat the root cause, the epidemiology of what's causing the symptoms of why we're struggling. Here's where I'm bringing this up. Earlier, you were talking about that rat study in psychology. I'm going to bring up another psychology experiment that was from the 60s that ties into this too. And it's a book by Dr. Kelly Harding, came out about 8 to 10 years ago, and it's called The Rabbit Effect. So we're moving from talking about rats in your experiment. We're talking about rabbits in this one, Bob. But this was in New Zealand back in the 60s and 70s. They were doing a study at that time using rabbits, and it was all focused on, at that time, there was a big push in trying to understand fat and cholesterol and how it affects your health. So here's what they did. Took these rabbits, they had different groups. They had a control group, they had an experimental group. And what they were doing, these researchers in New Zealand, with the rabbits, the control group was, they were given like what was considered a healthy diet at that time, not very high in fat and stuff like that. So they're supposed to have really good metrics, right? Whenever they'd come check their cholesterol and stuff. The experimental group, they're like, hey, this other group of rabbits, we're going to give them a lot of the stuff that we're told is super unhealthy. That's really high in saturated fat and cholesterol. And it's probably going to make it to where those rabbits, their metrics are not going to look quite as good. Here's what was fascinating. As they ran that study, they kept getting numbers where the experimental group that was being fed all the crap actually was getting better metrics on their overall health, cholesterol, fat, all that kind of stuff, right? The researchers couldn't figure it out. And so they had to go back and they were figuring out, okay, does it actually have something to do with the food? Is there something with our method? Here's what they discovered. Once they went through their entire process of figuring out what was going on, here was the difference. There was a graduate research assistant, just one of them, who in particular, when it was her turn to come and feed both groups of rabbits, She would go over to the experimental group, the ones that were not getting the healthy stuff, and she wouldn't just feed them. She picked them up. She gave each of them names and talked to them, and she would cuddle them. She cared for them. That made all the difference in the world in the outcomes for those rabbits in terms of their metrics. Even though they had all this other stuff, they're being fed this stuff that's supposed to be terrible for them, because this one person took the time to connect.
Intimacy, connection.
And so it was termed the rabbit effect, the life-changing, pieces of kindness, the connection of how it affects our overall health and well-being as a species. And we don't talk about it enough, but it absolutely is of paramount importance. It always has been, but I think now it's coming more front and center. And this is why I'm so glad we had you on to talk about this today, because we really are at an inflection point in history now with the proliferation of artificial intelligence, where it would be really easy for all of us to just give up on the human connection, doing it in person type stuff, and be like, I've got all the tools and stuff that I need. I never need to leave my house. I can get my groceries delivered to me. I can have my car gassed up in my driveway. Why do I even need a car? Somebody like a robot, come pick me up and take me to where I don't have to talk to anybody and have a conversation. We can literally live in isolationism and have all of our quote unquote needs met, but not one of the most important needs, which is connection. And it feels like that's why this is so important right now, is we have to get back to understanding the reason ERGs are so important, the reason these types of events that you're doing around the country of opening up and getting people to come together in person around shared interests and shared goals. If we lose that connection and we just let AI do everything for us, not only is it going to be to our detriment in terms of our physical health, but also our mental health. It's not who we were designed as a species. So that's why this stuff is so important. And I love that you were talking about how this is like the quintessential, like, survival of our species, why this is so important.
No, that's spot on. Yeah, I think it's the number one need that's going to determine how things are going to look in the future. And it's going to get really interesting.
It is, especially since you said like the companionship piece. We've already got like Zuckerberg saying, hey, I want, people to have like some of their best friends actually be these AI agents and stuff. And it's like, no, that is not the direction that we need to go.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, he doesn't want his kid to feel that.
So let's go there. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a thing that we should also realize is many times these tech visionaries, they don't let that tech inside their home, do they? Or with their kids and families.
I mean, when they're running the company, they're making decisions based off of corporate interest, not the interest of the people. So they know what they're doing. Their job is to get people to become addicted to their product so that they can monetize our attention. That's all it is. I mean, that's as simply as I can say it. So the goal is, how do we create technology in the future that's not compromising and that's not trying to get people addicted to our product, but that's something that's a useful tool to help actually benefit your life in your real life. And that's going to be the challenge. That's what I'll be spending the next decade on.
Do you have any precursors? I know you're already doing stuff that's working, but what are some of the things you're already seeing so far that's like, okay, this is in the bucket of like, this seems to be really working well in terms of moving that direction to help us have a healthier relationship with technology? Anything you can share so far? Or anything that you're hearing in some of your gatherings from other leaders that's like, hey, these are some of the changes we're making that seems to be creating a healthier
I would say,
outcome.
Yeah, the most interesting thing is like, there's so many so I just launched my new company 2 months ago publicly. It's called Local, LOCL, and it's a local community network where you can join the platform, create a digital, you can create or join any digital community within a 50-mile radius. So we're taking like Facebook groups, Discord, that kind of digital community, but we're geofencing them. So not only can you join a community locally, but you're able to discover all the other communities that are popping up in your geographic location. So one of the things that we're finding is people are starting to connect more with people based on proximity. And that's what we needed. That's what we're lacking in global social media, is you're connecting with a lot of people, but not based on proximity. That's what was lacking. With local, I'm trying to bring back the heart of proximity-based connection. And we are seeing like a lot of people are hitting me up and being like, man, I got reconnected with so-and-so and they live in my city. Or I got plugged into a community locally where I'm at that I didn't even know was a thing. And so, we're on local, we're seeing, running club pop up, a chess community pop up, all the way to unexpected communities that are using the platform, which I wasn't expecting, which was like, I greet everyone that comes onto the platform and I'm like, hey, how did you hear about local? And one guy was like, I came home from work and there was a note on my door and it's from my apartment complex and said, hey, download this app. We're going to host all of our communication as an apartment complex. And so, it's interesting to see the need in technology where you can have a digital community on a WhatsApp or a Discord or a Slack, but it's not helping bring discoverability to the community that you're trying to build. So that's what I'm really trying to solve is you can start a community on local and it's discoverable for free to everyone in your city so that they can find their people and join a community that has shared interests or struggles that they want to be a part of. And you're able to meet new people, join new communities, people that are right here in your local community. And I think that's where we're going to start to see real change and real relationships start to form. And it's not going to be as polarizing because you're not able to hide behind a screen or an alias account, talk all the shit you want, give all your political opinions on something. It's just like, these are people that you're now rubbing shoulders with. So local is an extension of real society, of real communities that are now meeting digitally in the in-between. So we're having a lot of discoveries around people connecting more on a proximity-based level, which I think is going to be more and more of a craving and a need as we start to move into that more artificial digital space. People are going to be like, dude, I just want to connect with people right here in my community and find out what's going on so I can stay in the loop on the local events that are happening. That it's a struggle right now to figure all that out. So I'm hoping to be a huge player in that space and just helping people stay in the loop on what's going on around me and how can I get plugged in. And I think that's going to lead to a lot of real authentic relationships and community building.
That's cool. So your technology really is removing a lot of the obstacles and helping people, become more discoverable, groups become more discoverable, actually get together and those things. Because right now, to your point, most of us, we live almost in anonymity when it comes to digital presence and using technology. It's like I'm using an avatar. I'm not even using my real name,
And
whatever it might be.
that's going to become exhausting. That's an old way of doing online communication. Like that's going to still exist on like the Reddits and the Discords and things like that. But we need more platforms that are just like, where's the transparency here? Well, like we want to create a platform that's human verified. As we're moving into a world of machines and a world of artificial relationships, where are the platforms that are actually human verified where I'm going to go on this platform and connect with real human beings and people in proximity to me? And I think that that's where in the next 2 years, local is going to meet a practical need for a lot of micro communities and pro social clubs. In the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to become a dire need. It's going to be something that's like, I have to have that. So I think we're a little ahead of the curve on where things are gravitating online. But I think platforms like Instagram are going to become irrelevant within the next 10 months. And it's because of how much artificial content and accounts are being created on platforms like that right now, where people are already feeling media fatigued. And now they're going to be like, God, this is just getting out of hand. It's exhausting.
It is, even just dealing with the changes in algorithms. Like for the most part, I just stick to LinkedIn. But even the changes that LinkedIn have made here over the last year or so, just I don't, and it's not one of those things. I get it. I'm in tech. It's not one of those. I just don't like it. I don't like the feel. I don't like the vision. I don't like where they're heading with this of trying to turn it into an influencer. Whoever's the loudest voice is who we're going to promote. You got to be doing video kind of stuff. Like that's not why I go there. I go there to find and engage with content and find new people that I resonate with, that I want to learn from, that I want to build a relationship with and help them make progress in what they're doing, because I think it's really cool or important.
Yeah. And LinkedIn it's slower moving than these other social platforms, but moving in the same direction, meaning, Eventually, it's going to be overpopulated with ads. It's going to be more about the influencers of the space than it is about connection. And the algorithms are going to reflect that because they're trying to manipulate the algorithm to get you addicted to specific type of content so that they can monetize on your attention. So any company that's taking advertising money for social communication, they make compromises. And it's not about the people anymore. It's about the corporate interests. And we're going to see that slower with LinkedIn than these other platforms, but that's where they're heading for sure.
Well, Bob, as we get ready to wrap up here, is there anything that you wanted to cover today that we haven't so far that's kind of top of mind for you as we get ready to land the plane here?
Yeah, I get asked that all the time. And the thing that I've been sharing at the end of podcasts or at the end of the events that I'm speaking at is whatever you're building right now, having a good concept got you a long way about 10 years ago in the era of Shark Tank and Shopify popping onto the scene. You could get pretty far with the concept, not anymore. You can have a good concept and a good idea, but it's not going to get you that far. You have to have conviction. And everything that you're building right now, if you're not passionate about it and you don't have conviction about it and you're not willing to bleed and sweat and die for that shit, then it's not going to survive. And we need more entrepreneurs that are actually in community builders that are convicted about what they're building. We have to have a deep level of conviction in this next season in order to see these visions survive and have potential in the future. So if you're a builder out there, a founder out there, build out of a place of conviction, it's going to get really hard. Building a business is on hard mode right now. But if you believe in it, you're passionate about it, you have conviction about it, keep moving forward in it.
I love that advice. And speaking of connection, as we get ready to wrap up here, I want to make sure that people can reach out and connect with you. What are the best ways to do that, Bob?
Yeah, I deleted all my social media platforms except for LinkedIn. So you could connect with me on LinkedIn or you could download the local app, LOCL. And I greet everyone that comes onto the app. Would love to connect with you there. And hopefully get you plugged into some local communities that you might be interested in.
I love it. Bob, thanks so much for coming on today and sharing some wisdom with us here on Working Forward about this dance of where we are right now with the advances in technology and where we need to stay focused in growing connections and community, not only to thrive, but for our survival.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
Yeah, thanks.
So I appreciate you, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Always a pleasure to connect with you, man, and love what you guys are doing with the network.
Thanks, brother. We'll be seeing you around soon.
All right, sounds good. See you, brother.
Thanks for tuning in to Working Forward. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Until next time, here's to building tomorrow, today.